Now, am I coming on? Okay. I can relate a whole lot to Carl. Put a microphone in front of me. I'm a little bit fearful of what might come out of my mouth. I have 3 stories that I tell, and it's been 9 years since I've told this one, so I'll tell it again. Sorry for those who've been here 9 years. When I was in college, I had a buddy that who told me this story, and he says it's true. And I apologize on the front end because there's a little bit of language here that you may not allow your kids to say and that sort of thing. But Dave had an older brother, was a little bit fearful to be in front of crowds, and Dave said that Steve decided when he was about 14 years old to become a Christian, but he didn't want to do it in front of a crowd, and so it was on maybe a Tuesday during the week that he went to his parents and said, "Hey, I want to be baptized into Christ," and so they carried him up to church and they baptized him into Christ, and this was a very small church in the Northeast, and even though it was a very small church, Steve didn't want to do it in front of the 30 or so people that were there. But as in small churches, you may or may not know that you get called on to do things on a weekly basis. And that very first Sunday, Steve got called on to lead the prayer before communion. He got called on to lead the prayer for the fruit of the vine. And no kidding, Dave said that Steve said this. He said, he bowed his head and he said, "Dear Lord, thank you for the fruit of the loom." And then realizing what he said, into the microphone said, "Oh crap." I have that capability, not knowing what may or may not come out of my mouth, and it's a little bit. It has to do with not doing this very often the last several years. I just don't flex those muscles quite as much. So Carl, thanks for leading the way here. I appreciate Carl because I mean we worship and we live and we grow in this community, whether we recognize it or not, and we've got people that like Carl that pursue the Lord, and we know he does, and we appreciate it, and we can point to people in our community that do that, and we say we're blessed. We're blessed because we do that, and that's I get the feeling that that's the purpose in the body is to be that for each other. I've got here. Again. As we've talked about guardrails, this thought keeps coming back to me over and over again, that our direction determines our destination. Where we end up in life, whether it's a life well lived that leaves a mark, is determined by the direction that we choose. I decided last night as Mary Jo was cutting my hair, I've decided that I'm going to get a new barber. No. I'm saying that because she's not here. We make superficial decisions all the time, but we make decisions that may or may not impact us even years in front of us. I did this illustration nearly 20 years ago at Green Valley Bible Camp, and it backfired, but it worked because it switched. I realized that we've got several golfers in here, Jordan and Randy and Mike Siegert, and We've got some other golfers that are probably pretty good. But we're going to hit a golf ball in this auditorium this morning, right now. So Jordan, since you direct the Camp Green Valley Bible Camp golf tournament every year, I'm going to have you I'm going to have you hit a golf ball at that corner right there. You think you can hit it? No? Mr. Bassett, Mr. Loken, and Mr. Ortiz, you guys might duck. This is not, by the way, this is not a real golf ball. I'm convinced that if I'd have put a driver in Jordan's hand, he could have hit the strip mall down the street here. So I'm going to let Jordan swing this club and hit the corner up there. Wow. We've got no liability. Nobody's going to the hospital, right? Okay. Okay, where's the tee? Okay. Now, come here, Landon. The goal here is not the goal here is not to let go of the club. Please don't hit my new friend. Hey, nice and easy, okay? Nice and easy. Thank you. Thanks, Landon. Thanks, Jordan. You guys give them a hand. What a silly illustration. But I'll tell you, when I did this, and I didn't do it today just because it might be something that would be hard to get to happen again. But the reason I did this is because when Jordan hits the golf ball, he likely hits it on the sweet spot of this club. When Landon, and he pretty much hit where he was supposed to hit, when Landon swung, he was way off here. Now, if they were hitting a driver, I bet Jordan would hit it 300 yards or 280 or whatever straight. How far, Jordan? 400? 400, okay. When Landon hits the golf ball, and I know that when Landon hits the golf ball, he's a little bit like me. There's a chance he's going to hit a car in the parking lot or an apartment if you're at a Lindsay golf course. And you saw. But the crazy thing about it is when Jordan hit the golf ball and when Landon hit the golf ball, the difference in where they hit was probably a quarter of an inch. And the difference in those two balls, if they'd have hit a real ball, would have probably been 150 yards. I heard a story recently about, and this is a real story, about a group of high school guys that were going to Oklahoma City to see a concert. And as I listened to their story, I was a little bit puckered up because I love some of those guys that were going. It's not my son, not anybody in the youth group, but I listened because some of the decisions that they were talking about making were pretty subtle and not very far off from what they should be, but they were a little bit, and I just thought, they may end up down the road a long way from where they want to be. Direction determines destination. Get your pen and pencil because I'm gonna read some things and I'm gonna say some things maybe that you want to write down. But it's gonna seem like it's all over the map, and but thankful for my brother that pulled it all together with a verse that we'll close with. Direction determines destination. And as we talk about guardrails, there's not much more that influences direction than friendship. And if there's a guardrail that we need, that our culture is becoming poor at, is friendship. Again, I'm going to have to be tied to my notes. If we get our friendships right, the right friends can set us up for success in a lot of areas of our lives. The flip side is true. If we get our friendships wrong, it can set us up for pain. It can set us up for trials, for struggle, for destruction. If you say it another way, you can say it, show me your friends and I'll show you what your future is. Show me the people you spend time with, and it might be pretty clear that we can identify the trajectory of your life. Solomon said this, that first slide. Solomon said this in Proverbs 13 and verse 20. Walk with the wise, and you will become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. In other words, if you hang out with those who have better marriages, are better with money, are better at relationships, are better leaders, you will become more like them. And the flip side of that is if those that are closest to you are on a different path, they're more foolish than you. Their marriages have big struggles. They have big money struggles. They're always in trouble, constantly challenged. Solomon says it's not going to end very well. Said another way, Solomon might say, and I realize it's wisdom literature, and we read wisdom literature a little bit differently. But Solomon might say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Show me your relationships and I'll show you your future. Not coincidentally, God has used friends in all of our lives. When we look back and we see very positive times in our lives, we recognize the relationships that were there that God used in during those times. But we can also see times when we look back when we were distant, when we got off the path. I recognize looking back at especially my teenage years, I rarely got in trouble alone. So if you have your pen and a piece of paper somewhere, and maybe it's just a bulletin, and this is I'm setting a trap a little bit maybe, but I would like for you to write down your 5 closest friends. And I know Marshall has done a little bit of an exercise like this before, but I'd like for you to write down your closest friends. You can use your phone, you can do whatever it might be. But closest friends are those that you might call in the middle of the night, those that might know your darkest secrets. Data and sociologists suggest that you are an average of those 5 people that you write down. You're an average of those morally. You're an average of those financially. You're if there's some in the group that pursue God, then it's likely that your group pursues God. those on your list are a lot like you. Solomon says you become like those you walk with. He also has, Solomon said, hey, let's define friendship. So Proverbs 17:17 says this: a friend is someone you may or may not know well, but can still be found on your friend list on Facebook. Wait a second, this isn't really in Scripture. This person's sole purpose is to comment and like all your social media activity and you feel good. Solomon didn't say that. He says really and truly in Proverbs 17:17, he says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. There was a video that I wanted to show, and I'll just give you a snapshot. I can't do it justice. If you want to go today on YouTube, if you're writing something down again, today on YouTube, go and write down Guinness wheelchair commercial. It's one of the best commercials that I've seen, and leave it to beer companies to produce some of the best commercials that we watch on TV, some of the most emotionally moving. And it's a commercial that opens on in a basketball gym, and there's 10 guys on the floor, and they're all in wheelchairs, and they're playing a hard basketball game, and there's a lot of bumping, and there's a lot of activity on the floor. And at the end of the game, 9 guys rise up out of their chairs, and 1 guy stays in his chair. And the implication of the commercial is that friendship is pretty special for this group of guys. I mentioned before at the beginning of this lesson that we're a culture that's forgetting what friendship is. It's being redefined. Some of it is social media that is redefining it for us. Some of it is our time. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a community, a handful of friends, not for a season but for life, that shared in community with each other, invested, cross-pollinated spiritually with each other. They learned and challenged. They loved each other. They became better people. They helped each other. They said things to each other that would heal. They said the tough words to each other. They are guardrails to each other. And I don't want the world to set the standard, but I love that commercial. The problem with the challenge, and I've already mentioned this, and data shows this, that very few of us have the level of friendship anymore that we see even in that commercial, this community. And I mentioned that I love this community, and I want us to continue to grow in loving our God and loving our neighbor and loving each other as we follow Jesus. Sociologists say there's been a fundamental shift in the last 30 years where 30 years ago, if you were to write down a list, you would probably write down 6 friends. I asked you to write down 5. Really, the number today is about 2. And I didn't see everybody, maybe 40% of you actually writing people down. And maybe that's because you don't have a pen. Maybe that's because you don't really, or maybe you're thinking of people in your head. But sociologists also say that maybe one of the saddest things, and it's not sad about you, but it's kind of sad about where our culture is and stuff, but 1 in 4 of us don't have a single person to write down as our primary friendship. Why is that? Why is that happening? I've got data that shows the 3 biggest influencers in why guardrail friendships are declining. The first, and I'm going to give these in reverse order. the third one, and go down, but increased work hours. Growing up, we all probably all knew somebody that had one of these little square things. What do you call those? Pagers. What was your response to somebody that had a pager? Because invariably they would get beeped during a meal, during a meeting, during something, and it may be on their vacation or whatever. What was your response? I can tell you what mine was. I don't want to ever have a job like that. And I know some of you guys are on, maybe have lives that where it's demanding. I mean, I know Carl's is a medical job. But the fact is that we all have one of those now. We all carry one of those now. I'll be honest with you. I've answered the phone for work while I was sitting on a ski lift. I've been driving down the beach, working on my laptop. And when I go on vacation, I pull out my laptop and I have to send reports every morning. We're never fully disconnected from work. We're working more and more hours. Those of you who are retired may think, oh, that's a shame. The second thing is our mobility. If you're over 40, then you move. Statistics say you move once every 5 years. If you're under 40, statistics say you move once every 2 years. In 2007, my company moved our family to Ohio, and my response, and it wasn't the ultimate goal in our journey, and my response was, I'm not going to invest in, listen to this, I'm not going to invest in relationships. And really, I didn't say that out loud, but I said, we're not going to be here very long. And in the process, we were church consumers, if you've ever moved. And I'd never been a church consumer in my life because I'd always worked for the church that I was attending. And suddenly we're church consumers, and I remember making the statement saying, hey, we're only going to be here about a year, so let's proceed like this. And really what I was saying is, let's not develop any guardrail friendships. Let's not invest in that. And the final thing is, and it's the number one thing that sociologists say is impacting our ability to build friendships, is the social media explosion. Now, I'm not here to say that social media is wrong or bad or sinful. Jason Mosley and his team leverage the benefits on our behalf. And so that we don't, but I will tell you that friendship in social media world is not friendship. Does that make sense? Somehow we've replaced the definition of friendship with the definition of social media friendship. Can you imagine even 20 years ago? Can you imagine even 15 years ago picking up a phone, one of these kind of phones that you push buttons, or 25 years ago and picking up one of these kind of phones and calling somebody and saying, you know what I had for breakfast? I had oatmeal for breakfast. I'll bring a picture next time I see you. Maybe I've said this before, I don't know, but Sawyer, our oldest, has a life-threatening dairy allergy. And in the last 14 months, we've been in the emergency room 3 times. And he's had to put the EpiPen in his leg and I mean, it's scary when you're a kid. And one of those times, he was blue and driving himself to the ER because he didn't know what was going to happen. A little bit scary. We have to know where we're going to eat. We plan where we're going to eat. We make sure that we understand the menu. And I've had conversations. About a month ago, I had a 10-minute conversation with the manager at those of you who are from Dallas, Uncle Julio's in Dallas, and he said, "No, there's not any butter in what he's going to eat." And so Sawyer ate it, and I'm telling you, not 15 minutes later, he said, "We got to go." And fortunately, we were standing in a Walmart, and across the street was an ER. But one of the things that, so when we go somewhere that Sawyer really likes, he'll take a picture of it. If he's anywhere in the hemisphere of Gus's Fried Chicken, because it doesn't have any dairy in the food, he'll say, "Let's go to Gus's," and the first thing he'll do, what's he going to do? He's going to take a picture of it. And you know what he says? You know, the kids all say this: "Phone eats first." I don't know what that means. Landon, you're gonna have to tell me what that means. But he posts that, and I'm one of those guys that instead of sending at work, I don't send emails. I'd rather walk across the room and have a face-to-face conversation. But we live in a world where we want to project an image on social media. We want to project an image, and so we take pictures, we use filters, we say just the right thing, and sometimes we put a little spiritual twist to it, and then we post it, and then we wait. We wait for the likes, and we say, "Hey, I got 3 likes." And I'm not being critical of that. I do the same thing, because you want to see this face in filter. But those are not replacements. That idea that we've got to be liked and that this image, those are not replacements for authentic friendship. Does that make sense? Those are not substitutes for friendship. Now, I will show you this commercial. We tee that up, guys. This is fantastic, too. May have to click on it. I'm fearful of that. Can we click? Are we clicking on the slide? It was when I sent it. See, this is when a boomer does something with technology. Precisely what we're talking about. It's really good, I promise.
Instead of mailing
Okay.
everyone my vacation photo. I'm saving a ton of time by posting them to my wall.
Ooh, I like that one.
It's so quick. It's just like my car insurance. I saved 15% in just 15 minutes.
I saved more than that in half the time.
I'd unfriend you.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
15 minutes for a quote isn't how it works anymore. With Esurance, 7.5 minutes could save you on car insurance.
Isn't that awesome? I can imagine my mom or my grandmother saying, "This is what Facebook is really like. Oh, you're on my wall. I unfriend you." I hope that we don't lose sight as followers of Jesus, authentic friendship, authentic relationship. These ladies obviously don't understand Facebook, and some of you in here may not understand Facebook, and God bless you. But how do we, kind of like Carl was saying, how do we not let the world define what we know to be precious, and let Jesus define that? How do we rediscover, rekindle friendship? I'm going to give you two things. I could give you 1,000 things to make us better friends, but I'm going to give you two things. Number one is be present. Be present. You don't. If you go out to eat today, you will walk into a restaurant and you'll see families of 4, 5, 6, and they'll all be on phones. And I don't stand in judgment of that, but I'm just asking you to remember to be present. Studies say that kids are more impatient with their parents' use and time on a phone than the parents are with the kids. And it's not because the parents are on may or may not be on more than the kids, but the kids just want the kids want their parents present. John 1 and 14, I don't know if you guys can get back to that slide. Yeah, there it is. John 1:14. Jesus became flesh and blood and moved into our neighborhood, is what the message says. The Word became flesh and lived among us. We know the meaning of Emmanuel is that God's presence is with us. Hebrews says that Jesus was the exact representation of God. John 1 says he moved into our neighborhood. He rubbed elbows with us. He became, and I listened to this, and I began to realize that God's message to us through Jesus, listen to this, and this is not mine, I stole it. But God's message to us through Jesus is, let's do life together. God could have sent a photo, a snapshot. He could have sent a note, but he sent an exact representation of himself. Not somebody that's going to keep arm's length, but somebody who's invested relationally with the world. Those I asked. I didn't solicit. I didn't ask. I didn't solicit this comment the other day. I wasn't looking, and he was not looking to say the right thing at the right time because he's a teenager. But somebody was asking Dawson the other day, my middle son, what makes Green Valley so special? And I don't know facility-wise. I mean, our kids our Flagstone teenagers go to about 3 or 4 camps, different groups of kids go to different camps in the summer, and they go to some fantastic camps. Fantastic. I guarantee you the worst facility of them all is Green Valley Bible Camp. It's rocks and wooden cabins. No AC, unless you're lucky enough to get in Fogger's cabin, right, Landon? Rocks, average food. And Dawson said, when my first year or two there, I was really interested in going swimming. I was really interested in horseshoes. I was really interested in basketball. And he said now, and I thought, wow, this is, at 14, I was still a stupid 14-year-old. And he said, now it's about relationships. And I thought, wow, he's getting it. This trip that our teenagers and some of our adults are on and Brandon leads is a spectacular trip. But some of the best time that will be spent on that trip will be the bus ride time, because it's face to face. It's relational. I will attempt to share this, but you know my emotional capabilities. About 6 years ago, our neighbor's family lost their 15-month-old son. We had gotten back from a baseball tournament, and we'd gotten back from a baseball tournament, and it was about noon on a Saturday, and our neighbors told us that Wes and Ella lost their child. For the next 2 months, Mary Jo would go next door. She never felt qualified, never felt equipped, never had words. But she would just go to be present. She would go to be present. If there's anything about the nature of God that we need to understand, that he's present. One of the things that in that relationship that developed, and it was there before, but after, when she began to be over there every day, she would attempt to share verses in Scripture that might be comfort. And she never knew if those were connected, if they were helpful. And about a year later, she got everyone came back in a card from Ella and said, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being there. Don't forget to be present. I'll tell you, and I tell my boys this. Educators, counselors, parents, teachers, in all environments, those that know how to ask questions and listen are those that are most effective. Be present, and the second thing is be authentic. We've already talked about this, but there's a picture in James 5 and verse 16. It says, confess your sins to each other and pray for one another that you may be healed. And that's a picture of this community in James. This community in James that is connected. We may, I stole this too, we may impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through our weaknesses. I'm glad we're a church that looks like we do. I'll read one more thing if I can find it, if I lost it. Be transparent, be authentic, and this is a little bit, what is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's the thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you. Then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you're real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or who have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I never know how to end these things, but I want to encourage us to be intentional, about our friendships. Let's not let confusion about social media friendship become the norm for us. Be intentional about pursuit of relationship with one another. Be intentional about being present, being authentic. This brother this morning, and John, he reminded me of John 13:35, and this is what I'll close with. He says, love one another the way I've loved you. Let's pray, and then we'll stand and sing. Father, thank you for the ways that you